Welcome to the Dance Lens podcast, where dance meets the arts, fashion, history, politics, and social evolutions. We'll draw back the curtain to take a deeper look at the art form and its artists through interviews, deep dives, and reviews. I'm your host, Cynthia Dragoni. Thanks for listening and enjoy. Today, we have an amazing artist on the show with us, conductor Garrett Keast. Keast is an American conductor based in Berlin who works all around the world. His work in ballet began in earnest in 2013 under John Neumeier at Hamburg Ballet, where he's conducted over 125 performances across 8 major productions. Keast's prolific repertoire includes Rite of Spring, Fearful Symmetries, Bernstein dances, and he's worked with many incredible ballet companies: Paris Opera Ballet, Royal Swedish Ballet, New York City Ballet, Les Ballets de Monte Carlo, Houston Ballet, and Atlanta Ballet, conducting iconic full-length classics such as Swan Lake, Romeo and Juliet, Nutcracker, Don Quixote, and more. He conducts frequently with Les Ballets de Monte Carlo under Jean-Christophe Maillot. He's also the founder of the Berlin Academy of American Music, an orchestra devoted to American repertoire and transatlantic musical exchange. Let's jump right in. Garrett, I know you've conducted for opera and ballet companies. Do you find there's a big difference between conducting for dancers versus conducting for opera singers?
That's a good question. Having conducted a lot of opera and ballet, I think I would say that they probably are a lot more different in the beginning of a career. And after I've been conducting professionally for really about 18, 20 years, something like this. I've been conducting ballet a lot since 2013. So I'd say the last 6, 7 years, I feel like they've really become they're really quite similar. They feel quite similar after doing a lot of both. Because, that's true. You don't get a feedback from the performers on stage with the ballet in the same way, but you do. You have to, I guess, in a certain sense, there's a little bit different skill set, but I think it's just like you're taking care of people on the stage. You're taking care of the direction. You're taking care of I consider myself in those situations. I'm like, it's really neat conducting an opera or a ballet because I'm the last one standing as a director. I'm still involved in it every moment from the beginning to the end. And I love that. I would also say it's really nice and in some ways more tidy and simpler to work with ballet than opera. And that it's a little less dangerous, a little less drama, usually less drama, not always, but usually.
That's interesting. In what way?
I think in ballet, your constituents are the dancers, of course, usually a ballet master, the choreography, but they're very much all in alignment and they're all on the same page and they're all working to be on the same page. Whereas in opera, you have, maybe it's bigger personalities. You have opera singers, which are really big personalities, really fun, by the way, super, super fun to work with them and very individual. I'm very not nervous, I would say, but they have a different kind of situation on stage because they really have to depend on their voice to sing. And it's like you really put yourself out there. I think that is similar with dancers, of course. But they're not in a company. They're not part of a group.
Right.
They're not part of a company. They're not under the same direction necessarily quite. Right. The other thing is there's just so many hats, so many people in charge, so many directors, so many different types of people. I'm like, oh.
Yeah. I think that's a big difference that probably people don't realize with opera singers is that with the ballet dancers, even if you're a big star, like you're in a company and you belong to that company, you're on this year-long contract. Whereas the opera singers, it's a different thing. It's like they come in per show.
Yeah, they come in for a production. Yeah, sometimes you're in Europe more often than they're in the States, have an ensemble of singers that are regulars in that house. It's a different vibe, but for me as a conductor, one thing I would say about ballet conducting that was very helpful for me that I brought directly from opera conducting is as a young conductor, I had the opportunity often to assist Christoph Eschenbach or lots of different conductors when I was younger in Dallas Opera or New York City Opera or Paris Opera, Vienna State Opera, things like this. And I was the assistant. So they would often just sneak away, or they'd have another engagement somewhere and they'd fly away. And I'd just be there for 3 or 4 days and, or 5, sometimes a week alone. I would be the only conductor. So I'd start conducting all the room rehearsals with piano, usually not with the orchestra very often. And I would just I took it very seriously upon myself I need to mimic their tempi. I don't know why. Now looking back on it, I think I probably did that more so than necessary, but I really worked hard to get their tempi, their ideas across, so to make it easy for the singers. And I think that really correlates very smartly to ballet, because in ballet, it's so much about tempo and about remembering tempo and going back. And for dancers and ballet, and it's same for singers though, it's so nice when the conductor can go back to the same tempo.
Right.
It's back again. Oh, the exact same tempo. That's what we go for.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you became a conductor? It's such an interesting position. Did you know that Rudolf Nureyev at one point was a conductor? I'm sure not on your level, but he actually, he even conducted Romeo and Juliet at American Ballet Theater when Julio Boca and Alessandra Ferri were dancing.
Really?
Yeah.
Prokofiev, Romeo and Juliet. It's a very difficult score. I just did it a few weeks ago. I didn't know that. He studied composition too, I believe.
I'm sure.
Oh, sure. How did I get into it? I grew up in Houston, Texas, and believe it or not, in Houston, Texas, and in Texas generally, there's very good music programs in the schools, public schools. And so there were very good music programs growing up in the late 80s and 90s. And when you went to junior high school, or now they say middle school, you could learn to play an instrument. That was like something offered. And to me, I knew about that some years in advance. And I was like, got to do this, I want to play the violin. That'll be amazing. And then I was taken to a football game at Rice University against the University of Texas. And I saw the trombone section in the UT band. And I was like, oh gosh, that looks way more fun than the violin. And so I became a trombone player. And actually, I think it was really good for me because I was a little bit shy, I would say, as a kid. And being in the band and all that stuff later on just was really good for my personality. But ever since I saw the band director in 6th grade, Mr. Clampett, teaching us how to play all those instruments and getting us to play together in a group, I always thought to myself, I like that job. And I just always kept going that direction. In early 90s, I was studying at the University of Texas. I was working on a Bachelor of Music degree at UT Austin. And I would come home every 2 weeks, starting about 93, because I met this conductor named Steven Stein. He was the associate conductor, or no, actually, I think his official title was conductor in residence of the Houston Symphony Orchestra. This is when Christoph Eschenbach was chief there. It was a really successful time for the orchestra. And I met him at a festival in the summer, and I was really impressed by his work. And I found a way to approach him. I talked to my father, but I was like, I got to go talk to this guy. I was a little nervous. And I asked him if we could sit down and talk about conducting sometime. He told me to bring a score. I brought a score. And the best thing, and I really am very appreciative of this, looking back on it, is that he told me during that hour-long visit we had at his apartment, is that, hey, I think we might have found a talent here. And I brought a Brahms Second Symphony to him, and we talked to just one movement of it. And I couldn't believe he said that. And it was the first moment I thought to myself, maybe I could become a professional conductor. And I was thinking about being a teacher or conducting, maybe being a band director, maybe conducting orchestras in a university or something like that. And it really got me turned around. And then he kind of helped push me to get into the program in Aspen for conducting and some other things. Just one of those fascinations, and I just couldn't stop.
So is there like a set path if someone was like, oh, I want to become a conductor? In ballet, there's a relatively narrow path to doing it. It sounds like maybe that's not exactly the same for you.
No, it really isn't. It's crazy. It's just like my neighbor downstairs here in Berlin is a lawyer, and we talk about it sometimes. It's completely different. I mean, as a conductor, there's no one way. There's no one right way. At one point in about 96 or 97, I got into a couple master's degree programs at good school in the U.S. But after UT Austin in my undergraduate, I went back to Houston because the Houston Symphony Orchestra was in a really great space with this Christoph Eschenbach. They had an amazing synergy, and I had access there. I started working in the Houston Symphony Library, and started calling titles for Houston Grand Opera and things like, and they got me into the mix of some of these things. And I got to conduct some rehearsals occasionally in special moments. And I decided to just not go get a master's degree. And that was, looking back on it, really smart. There's nobody checking that I have a degree anywhere I conduct. There's not. I went to New York City Ballet this last season for the first time. They know me a little bit already, but they're not checking to see what kind of degree I have. They're just interested in my experience.
If you look at the major ballet companies in the US, because in Europe, the system is just so different, let's call all the people who are at the top of the field, right? The principal dancers from New York City Ballet, American Ballet Theater, San Francisco Ballet, Houston, Pacific Northwest, Miami City. I'm sure I'm missing someone. None of them will have dance degrees. Not one.
Yeah.
Because we start young, and it's like in the US, dance education is not regulated. If those same dancers were to have studied in Europe, they would have a degree because it's recognized and regulated. Whereas here you get the same information, but it's just not recognized like in the value system.
Oh, I didn't know exactly that. Okay.
Yeah, fascinating. So there are dance degrees, and it's not to say that no one with a dance degree can become a professional, but that's not what the people at the tippy top of the field, that is not the path that they took. Not even one of them. They may get degrees along the way, but like no one, like maybe they went to Fordham or studied online.
Yeah. I think that's very much the same. You could get a master's degree or a doctorate, and conduct. That's pretty standard, actually. But that doesn't at all mean that you're going to become a professional conductor. Honestly, more likely it sets you towards an academic path in the music world. I mean, what I would say about becoming a conductor, it's quite a bit like becoming a solo violin, like on the circuit. To become a soloist as an opera singer or as a violinist, the typical ones are most popular two instruments are violin and piano for symphony orchestra concert. But there's cellos too, and there's occasional trumpet, and there's occasional couple others, but not much. It is crazy field. There's so much competition. There's so much great competition. One really has to have a dogged sense of direction and purpose, and just to keep going and perseverance. And otherwise, it usually doesn't work. Otherwise, so for me, it was, I would say, I remember at UT Austin, I was getting a music education degree, a Bachelor of Music degree. And I was thinking at first I would become a teacher. And then I met Steven Stein and some other things happened and started developing and started realizing, no, I could do this professionally. And that was a big moment in my life to recognize that. And I told my what are they called? The academic counselor, Dr. Duke. I remember him. I was like, Dr. Duke, I can't take that. I can't get the teaching certificate. And, oh, you have to get the teaching certificate. It's important you have a backup plan. I said, no, I do not want a backup plan. I was like, my backup plan ended up being, and I used to not share this with people, but I will be happy to now. Is that when I was younger, I would not share. But my backup plan, I didn't tell him that at the time either, was I would find a secret waiter job always in the background to make ends meet so I could keep pushing on my career path.
Yeah, and I think it's cool. It's so like devoted and rugged. Like it's a great story.
Yeah, that's what I had to do. I remember I was associate conductor for 4 or 5 years at New York State, in the New York State Theater there, which is a Kolk Theo in Lincoln Center now, New York City Opera. Before I went completely defunct in 12 or whatever that was. And I remember it was sometimes I would conducting a stage rehearsal there until 3:30 or something, and then I had to go rush into Midtown to work at this job, and I just wouldn't tell it. I wouldn't tell everybody. I wouldn't tell people in Lincoln Center. I gotta go.
Oh, so that's actually what you were doing.
I had to do that. I had a great title, associate conductor, New York City Opera. It paid terrible. The pay was horrible. So everybody did it. This kind of stuff. A lot of people did this kind of stuff.
That's interesting. I wouldn't have guessed, and I'm sure nobody else would either. And it's its own interesting conversation about the state of how the arts are valued in the US. Like some of the people at the tip that is the top of the privilege pile, right? Like in the arts, you have one of the most prestigious positions, and then they're running to wait tables. Like it's not a reflection on you. It speaks to the entire society.
Sure. I don't think that happens nearly as much in Europe. I mean, I think what it is though, and I think it's the same in dance, is that if you there's no guarantees in this business. No, we're all in this, it's all the same business to some degree. Dancers, conductors, musicians, violinists, everything. And there's no guarantee. And so sometimes you just have to make your way. You have to find your way and insist on it somehow too.
For sure. But especially in the US, I can speak to the situation for dancers. It is very different in Europe. So I think it's good to hear those stories because there's this feeling of if you were good enough, then you wouldn't have to do these other things.
Oh, I
And
hate that.
the truth is, it's not something that's important to us collectively. So then you see that reflected on the individuals. But yeah, we can talk about there's no guarantees and you have to do it no matter what. And all of that's true. And it's romantic. And it's like the poetry of I'm going to walk towards my calling no matter what. It's a lot easier to be a freelancing dancer in France than it is in New York. End of story.
I really love this. There's a legend, basically. It's a legendary story. You might have heard of it, but it's right there in New York of during the first premiere, I don't know what the opera was, but first opera that the Met premiered of Philip Glass, he was still driving a taxi daily. And isn't that amazing? I just love that. And you know what? That's the point is I was teaching at a young composer, not young, but a composer's workshop here in Berlin we had recently. And I was really trying to tell these composers, because to become a composer is also crazy, just insane. Make a living as a composer, very, very difficult. And I was trying to tell, listen, there's all types of composers' careers. Some of them have full careers in a regular job of some sort. But Charles Ives sold insurance very successfully and became one of the great American composers. And some composers are writing music just for the piano, for themselves and playing, and they publish their music and they find real happiness and interest and care and love for that. And it's not just necessarily about being a successful composer that writes a full ballet that's premiered in Paris or something. It's not necessarily about that. It's like finding your way, and we all have to find our own ways. And like, this is also a career as a conductor or as a cellist or as a dancer. Yeah.
Yeah. And now the ways are changing. Communications are changing. Media is changing. There are people being scheduled at places like Carnegie Hall who became stars on TikTok.
Yeah. I hear about that sometimes. I'm like, I have not heard of this person. Who is this? And then somebody will tell me something like that. Yeah.
Because it's like the power of the audience, but just now like the arbiters of taste are shifting. So it's no longer only going through the funnel of, like people at the top of institutions. And we can have opinions about that, or maybe there's upsides and there's downsides, and that's all fine. It's its own conversation. But the fact is it's happening. So it's like, just to speak to, there's a lot of different ways to have a career. It's like now there are even more.
And what's so important is I think it's for artists to recognize that it's not important to have for a career to be specifically just like somebody else's, they all could be different.
One thing that you were talking about was learning how to collaborate and letting go of the need for control.
Yeah, that's what I think is important. And I think it's learning where the line is of what, when you're young, you just can't help it. You think, and I think a lot of, not just when you're young, I think that is something I've really learned and really enjoyed and really enjoy about conducting is that it's a collaboration, and the musical phrase doesn't have to go exactly the way I thought originally for me to be happy about it. And that's a very important point, I think, as maybe more mature adults, is they recognize, that, of course, I can go many different ways and still be wonderful. Or, for instance, in ballet, like what people say about ballet, people constantly in my world will say, oh, is it okay you like ballet conducting? Is it okay for you? You really have to do their tempos exactly, or their tempo exactly. Yeah, but that's what I have to do in opera too. I mean, symphonic concerts as well. When I'm conducting with a soloist, I have to really. Sometimes I did Rhapsody in Blue several months ago, and absolutely a different way than I would like to do it. That one was really tough. He was a great pianist and everything, but I still was like, wow, this is not the way I was thinking. It was not how we rehearsed either. But you have to be flexible, and it's really important for ballet to be willing to take care of what is needed. And then I think what I particularly love about conducting ballet is that I find if you can really make music that sings and really make the music really get the orchestra really to jump in full and give full energy and style and shape and really, really commit to the performance, I noticed the ballet companies and the dancers and directors, choreographers, whoever, ballet masters, they really appreciate it. And they will say so, even so. Sometimes they'll say, I feel like they say so more so than in opera or in other situations. It's really, really super collaborative. Yeah.
It's interesting, right? Because the dancers were used to hearing music in a certain way, but there would probably be a fair amount of difference if you were just conducting, let's say, Sleeping Beauty. If you were just doing the score without any dance, I wonder if we would hear that.
You would, because it depends. Yeah, it depends. Every conductor's going to do it differently also. But yeah, I would say is that sometimes I'll conduct a piece that a ballet company has done with tape many times, with a recording many times. And then they get to the orchestra. Almost every single time they'll say, oh, we really prefer the orchestra, as long as the orchestra is really good. And because it's fresher, it keeps you on your toes more. I think it's becoming more standard these days for there to be really good conductors in the pit in ballet. And I think it's important, honestly, because I could definitely say this in the past, there has been moments where it just felt really, there's not much care given to the level of the conductor in the pit. Can be sometimes that they're just like choosing somebody that really can just keep the time the way they want it. But I think you want somebody to keep the time the way you want it and take care of the stage wonderfully. And at the same time, make a lot of poetry, a lot of sparkle, a lot of music in the pit. So it's just, in the end, for me, really, I always say this, is that I want to produce a concert-like performance with the ballet. You notice that, right? When you go to performances and suddenly, wow, like the orchestra's particularly better than maybe usually.
Yeah, you can feel the life or lack thereof in it, like immediately. Also, because there are all those musicians, there are all those bodies in the pit. It's like you can feel the vibes coming up from the floor. When people are engaged and they're deeply in it and in the flow together, it creates a circle around them. So sometimes you can definitely feel it when that circle doesn't exist, like when we're just executing in the quietest, most like predictable possible way.
And I remember too, I don't mean to be presumptuous at all, but I remember sometimes I was really a young conductor in ballet 12 years ago, 13 years ago at Hamburg Ballet. John Neumeier's like, man, I'm really going for it down here and they're really playing well. And I hope John and Lloyd and them aren't getting upset with me here. Maybe I'm doing too much or something. I never found that. I was always worried a little bit that, maybe they would say, or at other ballet companies too. I was like, maybe they'd say we're giving too much. I really tried to, in a way, I throw myself into a performance because I always notice with orchestras, whether it's ballet, opera, concert, whatever, it doesn't matter. If I give them my full energy and attention, they give me a lot back. But if I take it easy and just organize and polite, and then they'll just give you that back. And so I think it's important to you got to go for it. I was just conducting Romeo and Juliet with Ballet de Monte Carlo in Valencia, and that's a fantastic opera house there. And fantastic. They have a really elite orchestra. We were all like, oh my God, this orchestra here in Valencia is incredible.
That's cool. Can you tell us the story of your first ballet at Hamburg?
I conducted Nutcracker before in the States when I was really young and just at a really small amateur kind of company. So I had not really conducted any ballet professionally. And in 2013, I was introduced, a few years before that, I was introduced to John Neumeier via some people in Berlin and Hamburg and such. And I got to know them over time. Their company manager was telling my agent, hey, we'll try to find an opportunity for him. Something will come along. And eventually it did. And it was spring of 2013. They called me, I think about 3 or 4 weeks before. I said, we made a terrible mistake in this last performance of a run of 8 performances of John Neumeier's Purgatorio. We don't have a conductor because our conductor who's conducting it is booked in Paris at the same night. And can Garrett do this? It's just crazy idea. It was 8 Alma Mahler songs with a soprano, with the orchestra and the soprano, and then intermission. And the second half was I would imagine, a piece you don't know, Mahler's 10th Symphony. It's not really written by Mahler. He had only fragments, but Derek Cook put this arrangement together. It's really cool. It's really great. But it's 5 movements and it's an hour, almost an hour and a half. Huge piece, really tricky, really difficult. And anyway, So they said, could Garrett do this? And I've already jumped in a few times in opera and things like this. But the big point is I wasn't going to have any rehearsal, no orchestra rehearsal at all, never conducted in the house. All they could do is say, we could send you a video that you can watch and you can come see the last 3 or 4 performances before you conduct. And so I took the train up there a few times and I watched. And luckily, their conductor, Simon Hewitt at the time, super great guy, really nice Australian guy. He told me, I conduct this in 3, I conduct this in 1, I conduct this in 2, which was very important because the second movement of that symphony is all a mixed meter and really, really tricky. And if you don't lay it down for the orchestra in a really clear way, it's excessively difficult, I could say, for them. So anyway, I knew it was a big opportunity. Conducting in the Staatsoper in Hamburg. Had only been in Germany a couple years. Well, I was out of my job. I had a full-time position at Deutsche Oper Berlin for about a year and a half, but I was out of that position then. And so everything that came my way, I had to just make the very, very best of it. And so huge piece. And so I got myself fully prepared. Simon helped me. I think there were some rehearsals and touch-up rehearsals I could go to. I went to 3 or 4 performances. And then it was my night to do it. And absolutely green. I didn't meet anybody in the orchestra beforehand. They knew it, so they knew there's some conductor coming in. I assume they figured it'd be a disaster. And I remember because that second movement, like I said, was really, really tricky, mixed meter, like Stravinsky and kind of thing. I still do this somewhat. I get into the house. I like to get into the house about an hour and a half before the show. Just get relaxed, make sure all my clothes are there, make sure I'm all set, check my stand in the pit, make sure everything's not being a rush. Usually I have to have a sandwich or something. But that night I was there 2 hours before, maybe 2.5. And I remember about an hour and a half before the performance, I decided I'm going to take a walk all the way around the theater just to like breathe and think and focus and concentrate. And so it's in the kinds of crazy things you say when you're walking around the theater, because when you're pretty stressful situation, you got to be ready to focus. I was still pretty young conductor. I was like, Garrett, make sure you turn the page. Can you believe that? And I was like, make sure you turn, because sometimes you get so caught up in stuff, you could like not turn the page for a couple of pages or something. And you can get lost. It really cause a problem for yourself. And like, Garrett, make sure you turn the page. Just get in that groove with that tricky mixed meter. Watch her up there for this part. Just keep focused. And I walked around the whole theater, and the theater is not like just by its standalone. It's connected to a bunch of other buildings on a couple streets. So I had to walk around like 10 minutes to get around the whole theater. And I did it twice. And I was just like getting in the zone. And it was just thrilling because I went for it. It went extremely well. And that was the beginning of my career there. I conducted, I think, about somewhere between 125, 130 performances with that company, 100 in the house, like 8 productions in the house. And I did several productions on tour with them. And that's where I got most of my ballet experience. And it was a huge experience. And somehow that went well. And I think that what I heard is that there was a production of Otello, famous production of Otello by John Neumeier. The next season, there was some problem with the conductor or something. So they just gave it to me. And it just went from there. But boy, that was a big evening.
I love those lightning chances that totally pivot. Sometimes they pivot the entire life.
I remember it was so fun. Hamburg Ballet it's a great company, and they had some amazing dancers. During my time there, it was like this prima ballerina was Helene Boucher, this French ballerina. She's amazing. And she's now married to Karsten Jung, that's also a German dancer they had there. And Asha Trusch was there, and all these like kind of legends from the Hamburg Ballet. What was neat about John and Hamburg Ballet, one of the things that was really neat is that he knew how to really create a ballet audience. He built that over the last 51 years. It's just an amazing ballet audience. And he also knows how to really elicit a response from the audience at the end of his ballets. They sold really well. In that opera house, it's known that the house does better with the ballet than the opera. And the opera used to be, the opera's a top opera company in Germany, but still, the ballet just is always selling over 80, 90%, and the opera wasn't. It's good for business. But one thing was really fascinating is that you always go after it's all over, and I go up onto the stage, and standing in the wings to take a bow with everybody. I go out last. It's always funny being a conductor. You go out last in the ballet and you take your bow and you have the orchestra stand and all this stuff. And then we take a few company bows and then he just knock everybody off the stage quickly if the audience is still pretty strong. And we do the whole thing from the beginning again. And I've even been on that stage a few times where that would go for 10, 12 minutes, 3 sets of full company bows.
Wow.
And I thought it was really smart the way he did that because he really built up the excitement and the audience starts to want to be a part of that. And it's just in a certain sense, I would say is like a very American thing in a way. It's like success breeds success somehow. This spontaneity, the excitement of that moment, audience wants to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's so interesting. What else do you think was in the sauce of creating the ballet audience there?
Good question. I think that a couple things maybe. I think all his storytelling ballets became his thing. I know he worked tirelessly and was up all night a lot and came in just really super focused and devoted to the dancers and such. Certainly always felt like he was very appreciative of what I was doing with him, with his company and with the music. And he certainly trusted me a lot and we could talk about things. And what I really liked is that at the end of the performances, we'd really speak about things. Oh, I like this a lot. I like that. Hey, be careful here, Garrett. This is just a little more of this or that. Usually there'll be a couple notes, as there always is. But he was always very appreciative, and I think he was with everyone. And he gave just really honest, clear notes. But at the same time, he really held his distance away from everybody to a good degree, where it was really clear that he's the boss. It's really clear that he's in charge. He's the choreographer. He's the intendant of this ballet company. And in a way, I thought it's very smart because everybody really stands at attention when he comes into the room. You felt like there was some folklore involved or some level that you have to hit. We're at the Hamburg Ballet. We have to hit this level. I remember there's one time we did his Midsummernight Dream in Tokyo, one of his most famous ballets, Midsummernight Dream, with all this Mendelssohn, but also he has all this electronic music of Ligeti in it, but the orchestra doesn't play. And it's spectacular. And I can't remember what year it was premiered. I think it was in the 70s. But when you see this ballet, even to this day, it looks like it's brand spanking new. For the futuristic parts of the ballet, it has these amazing costumes. There's no way you can think it's old. You think it's just brand new. And I remember we did that in Tokyo and it went really well. It was the first time I conducted that ballet. Then we came back to Hamburg and I was conducting this Shakespeare dances. It was one piece, but it was a mixed program musically. It was like Mozart and can't remember, William Bolcombe or somebody. And there was a couple other English composers, really nice music, maybe some Beethoven. And it was a big program. And we just didn't have much. We were going to do it a few weeks later, or a month or two later. So we had to do it. So he just pushed it into the schedule in Hamburg, and it was going to get 3 performances there. I don't think it was originally in the program like a year before that. And so I got thrown into the show. We didn't have time to properly do all the rehearsals with orchestra. Anyway, first performance, he came to me at the first intermission. He said to me, Garrett, you told me I could talk to you anytime if I have a problem. You are too fast. You are too fast. You need to breathe. You need to do what you need. You need to figure out what you need to do to take care of this because it is too fast. My attention was already fully on because of the new piece and we were first night. But he said that during the break with Lloyd Riggins right there and felt the pressure, definitely sweating. And I went in there and just tried to chill out. It got a lot better. And anyway, he could be tough. You could be tough. And later I never heard from him, but I think Lloyd told me, hey, he was happy the way you handled that. I didn't feel like he made it personal. When I'm working with a new choreographer or somebody in a new company or Stockholm or something, it's just like, hey, if you need anything, just tell me. Don't wait. Tell me as soon as possible. And actually, I even will tell now, just Jean-Christophe Maillot is really comfortable. He and I are really comfortable working together. And so I just tell him, stand right behind me in this. We have one stage orchestra rehearsal. Stand right behind me and just tell me if something's too fast or slow. Then I'm experienced enough and old enough now to not... That doesn't hurt my feelings.
Have you ever had to take over mid-run or mid-show?
Yeah. And sometimes without having seen it. What's neat about living in Germany is we have these crazy German opera house. So these opera houses, like here in Berlin, you have Staatsoper Berlin, just a kilometer away from here. It's like They have a huge season. They do like, I don't know how many, 24 operas a year. So it's just like this big German rep house kind of thing. And so things happen like the first, like this is the way a ballet goes together. A new ballet, a new production. You have lots of orchestra rehearsal time alone. And then you have lots of orchestra stage rehearsal time. You have lots of time. You have a couple months, 3 or 4 months sometimes in the studio, just figuring out how the piece is going to work. You have all this time worked into the schedule, and then you finally do the premiere and the opening, and there's a big party, and there's speeches, and press, and everything. And then you do your first 8 performances or whatever it is for that first season. That's great. That's great. But then the next season, it's like a regular thing in the repertoire now. It could be Mahler's 10th Symphony. It could be like some crazy, huge Romeo and Juliet. It could be some crazy, difficult ballet. But now it's in the repertoires because we just did it last year, 3 years ago. So now we put it out there and we have one orchestra rehearsal and then we have one on stage maybe. And it just goes. And lots of good things happen because of that. But sometimes the conductor just has to jump in and take over mid-run.
The ballerina Wen Tan from San Francisco Ballet, she said that Luigi Tomasin, the director, when she was new to the company, asked her to learn Stravinsky Violin Concerto to perform the next day, the principal roles. And she said, he just handed me the VHS and was like, here, try to learn it. You'll perform it tomorrow. And she did. She learned it overnight. She said at the end of the performance, she was sweating, but her hands and her feet were still cold. You'd mentioned that there's a different rhythm in the German orchestras and opera houses and a different kind of work ethic. But can you explain that a little bit more?
Sometimes people say these opera houses are factories in a negative way, but they are factories. I think in a positive way. It can be negative, of course. It can be sometimes off performances, but that can happen at a stagione and house too. But I just think it's really interesting working in a house like Hamburg or Deutsche Oper Berlin, Staatsoper Berlin, or Staatsoper, someplace like this that are really big. There's a lot more of them too. Stuttgart, and there's Dusseldorf and Cologne. There's lots of big opera houses here in Germany where they're doing ballet, really under the same umbrella. And that's, for me as an American conductor, that's really different because, for instance, I was conducting the Houston Ballet a few months ago, Sleeping Beauty, and a lot of those the orchestra musicians are in the Houston Grand Opera Orchestra, but they're really separate organizations fully.
Right.
There's no overlap. They're completely different organizations. There's not any overlap. They're just, so I find it nice in a way that here you come to these big opera houses in Germany and the ballet company it's a big part of the house too. I guess what I would say is I just felt, especially when I was younger, going in to conduct at Deutsche Oper Berlin or in the pit in Staatsoper Hamburg, like those, I think it's fun as a conductor because everybody thinks what we do is like fancy or so prestigious, maybe, blah, blah, blah. I'm a conductor. But you go into the pit there and it's like, you have to be careful you don't trip and fall and die. It's dangerous down there. There's like cords everywhere. There's lighting cords for all the music stands. Just getting onto the podiums, you have to be careful. And you want to walk in quickly and everything. And it's like dusty down there. And when the lights are down, it looks really nice. I love that about it. I really learned when I was younger just to like roll up my sleeves, don't dress up. Come in, relax, like a normal Joe, a little bit attitude goes a long way in a German opera house. Like I wore my fancy watch for this to talk about this with you today. Cause like I do this still with orchestras, make sure they don't think I'm trying to like show off. Go in there, just like easy going, friendly, dress professionally, but not fancy. And I think it's smart because there's like a workman-like ethic in an opera house in Germany.
And you feel like would that be very different somewhere else?
I guess what feels different about it to me is that in Germany and same in Austria, I'm sure the same. I haven't worked in Switzerland in opera houses, but I assume it's the same. It's like there's this rhythm to the house because the house is so big and there's so much going on. You walk in there and you see violinist, you're saying, hey, how are you doing? What's going on? He's like, oh, we have this concert this week, so we're at rehearsal. Oh, we just finished this ballet we're doing that just closed. Or I have 4 more dients this week. Oh, we just did this crazy huge Mahler thing, or this cozy fan tutte happening, or whatever. It's like there's always something happening. It's people coming and going. In the orchestras, in a place like Staatsoper Hamburg, there's like 100, I don't know exactly, but I think there's something like 130 people in the orchestra so that they can switch in and out all the time. It's a different thing. And at Houston Ballet, Houston Grand Opera, 2 companies I know really well, they do one piece at a time. And they do that. They do this opera. They do it really well. They rehearse it fully. They perform it fully, however many, 6, 8 performances, something like this. And they pack it all up and they put it away. And it's just very different in Germany. These pieces start to overlap, or that piece comes back later in the season again with a different conductor, perhaps. I also just recently here in Berlin, where we live in Prenzlauer Berg, I was walking with my wife down towards the park, and we saw like a couple of big Staatsoper Berlin, like big 18-wheeler trucks. So not 18-wheelers, but they're big trucks, big trailers. They're just being carried around town because they're probably going from their warehouses out a little bit out of town to bring stagecraft in. That's why I came to Germany. There's just so much happening here. It's fascinating.
I think it's been that way for a long time. It's the values in the society, even before recent cuts, et cetera. U.S. federal arts funding was like, I think it was 46 cents per head per year. Whereas just for a little perspective, in Germany, it was $85 per head.
Oh, really?
In whatever year that statistic was from, but it wasn't that long ago. And even if there's been some fluctuations from administration to administration, the fluctuation's never that big. That's still the reflection. Is art important to us? And then it allows those places to put on work that maybe they're not sure if it's going to sell. So then you can take a little bit of a risk and let the art forms develop, let them stay in shape. It matters.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, totally. I think you can take more risks here because of that.
You were saying that you have some crazy moments that have been challenging collaborating with dancers and choreographers. Is there anything that jumps out off top of mind that you could share with us?
When you're conducting ballet, there's always soloists, and especially in a traditional ballet like the Nutcracker or Sleeping Beauty or Swan Lake, they want a specific tempo that they know from a recording. And as a ballet conductor, you can memorize that recording and do quite well and take care of them quite well, and not necessarily know exactly what's on the stage. You just really, okay, I nailed, wait for that, wait for this. And if you give them that tempo, they're really quite happy. I could talk about that for hours because I did a lot of it. But half of what I do are these traditional pieces where you really do have to watch for the footwork, and you have to watch for how they start, so many different details. A lot of dancers are really thankful and appreciative, and you take care of them, they appreciate it. And then you have a little moment where you're not quite perfect, and they just let go, and they're like, oh yeah, next time let's try to do this like that. But yeah, no problem, don't worry. Especially if they know you're really serious and you take it seriously. I remember a few moments where one time I was Conductor. And what is it, that role that's so difficult? Is it Queen?
The Queen of the Dryad?
Yes. And she has this big variation. It's really, really difficult. And so I did it in this. Dancer had a really hard night of it. Oh my gosh, it just didn't go well. And she just was not happy at all. And I could see that she was not going to be happy. But my tempos were really like we had been doing. And so I really had to recognize that, okay, I did everything I could, and ballet masters set me up, and this is what they wanted, and this is what they said, and et cetera. But oh my God, she screamed and yelled at me in the side stage after the performance. I really got an earful that night. It was fun. It's a fun story. Ruined my solo.
Did you think it was too slow?
I don't think she knew.
Oh, okay.
I'm not.
We're not going to be. So there's no constructive future there.
Oh,
right?
No, there was not. Everybody heard it. A lot of people heard it. So they talked about it on their own, and she came back to me and apologized later. But it's a really tricky thing to do anyway. So that did happen. I remember a couple other things like that have happened, of course, where I remember one time in some variation where a man comes around the corner and onto the stage and up stage left and takes their first step. And it's like, usually you go right the second they take their first step. But I went a second before, and I didn't mean to. I think it was 2 shows in one day or something. Yeah. And he did not let me go. I was like, you got back on, you were back in half a step you were on. It was no problem. But he gave me hell.
Something that I'm curious about is, do you find from country to country that there are different cultures with relationship to the music? Like at New York City Ballet, Balanchine never wanted a star system. it was like the choreography would be the star. They do have ranks, but it's even in their marketing, like they won't lean on a certain dancer being cast. It's like very much about the work. And then a friend of mine was telling me that she saw a Russian company. I'm not going to say which one or which ballerina. They were on tour. It was Giselle, the dancer, was completely off the music the entire time because she was insisting on her tempo, and it became like a battle of the wills between
Oh, wow.
the conductor and the dancer, which of course now we're still talking about that performance 20 years later. So it can have its own appeal. But have you ever had an experience like that or seen a difference in the philosophies?
Yeah, that's interesting. Some companies, they'll say that we really like to have for the conductor to have a viewpoint and for the dancers to go with that to some degree, unless it's off. If it's too far off, they'll quickly tell you. But I remember at New York City Ballet, I've only conducted Nutcracker in New York City Ballet. And they definitely said, oh yeah, I noticed from the beginning, like they were not giving as many notes sometimes as they would other places. At Hamburg Ballet, they would say that they would go along. And I think they do a lot. But also you would get a lot of feedback. Sometimes from so many different ways, it could be very confusing when you're new at it. Because you're getting feedback from a ballet master. It's like, oh, this is too fast. And then John saying he loves it fast. And then and then sometimes John would jump in and say, Garrett, listen to me. I'm the one who tells you if the tempo is too fast or just, and that's very helpful actually to know. Yeah. Because sometimes they're just different factions, or sometimes they'll even tell you, listen to us, not to the dancer. Or often you'll hear, we don't want the dancer speaking up too much about it.
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating that, I think it's fascinating in a way as a conductor, learning how to figure out what's right and who's got the best information sometimes. Also, I think it's interesting. Sometimes I notice in new productions or in a piece that is coming back on board for the first time in a while, that in the beginning, in the rehearsals with the orchestra and such, they're like, oh, Garrett, not too fast. And then 2-3 performances into the run, they're like, oh, it can go faster now. People relax. People kind of relax. Oh, they have all the steps. They have it all figured out. And now it's easy.
What about the company you're working with now, working under Jean-Christophe Maillot?
It's a company that's kind of new to me. I've been working with them for this fall. It'll be 3 years. Yeah, I've only done about 4 ballets with them, 4 or 5, but I really like them. They're very quick and they're very smart. They travel all the time. They tour a lot. They're kind of the ambassadors of Monte Carlo, the princess there and such. I remember the first time I ever worked with them was in Korea. I guess this is 2 years ago, this coming September or October, or maybe it's 3. I can't remember. But I'd never seen the company. I'd conducted his Romeo and Juliet in Toulouse before. And so he liked that. And he heard I had a lot of ballet experience. So he said, give me your number. I gave him a CD of my orchestra playing some other music. And so I was like, we'll see if he ever calls back. But he did. And so Sony canceled, and I jumped into this Romeo and Juliet, Prokofiev, which I love. And I think it's one of their most famous productions. It's spectacular and very tall company. Like not everyone, but there's a lot of beautiful tall dancers there. Kind of one of his things. And he has this very special person, ballet master there, head ballet master, Bernice Copier. And they met when he first came to that company way back. I don't know when that was, 30 years ago or something. And abused for his muse in a way that he like choreographed things using her as this like focal point. And as I think he really became like a system for him to move forward and to develop ideas. And she's tall and very elegant. And I think somehow that's became really a defining factor for the company. And she's so completely involved in that place. And so nice because I'll see her at every show too, usually. And we just did this Romeo and Juliet again a few weeks ago in Valencia. I remember this the first that we did together in Toulouse.
Oh,
but yeah, isn't that nice?
It is. It's poetic. It's like that it stays with you. Those experiences stay with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And the music stays with you. The music's so incredible in a piece like that. And it's captivating for the audience and for the dancers, for the storytelling. It works so well. And yeah, that's what I love about it. We did another piece last year, Fearful Symmetries. John Adams really tricky. It's that way. It's just, it's very, very difficult. And it was so fun to do it in Monte Carlo because they had premiered it. And when he first did it in Monte Carlo, I don't know, 20 years ago or something, the orchestra could not do it. It was not possible. And they have a very good orchestra there. I don't know what happened. And then he found out I have a focus on one of my things I really have a focus on is American repertoire. So I got to do it a year and 3 or 4 months ago in April of 24 and with Monte Carlo, Philharmonique de Monte Carlo. And it was so fun because I could be the hero. I never get to be the hero. And like the orchestra was like, oh, let's see how this goes. And you remember 20 years ago, some of them remember they were in the orchestra 20 years ago when it fell apart. It was fun because, usually when you go to ballet, you're not in the social media. You're not like, they don't talk about you very much. The reviews don't mention the conductor or the orchestra necessarily. They should more actually, because the music should be an important part of ballet. Oh my God. I was like, what's going on? I'd never conducted in Monte Carlo. I've been with them on tour a few times and I was in their stories all the time. They had like video shots of me conducting. I was like, every day, I was like, this is amazing. It's really, really fun.
What about the organization that you created, BAM? I think it's so interesting because it's a mixture of American music and European music. And of course, you have a particular perspective on all that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. This is Carlo. It is my kind of, during the pandemic, everything stopped. I was conducting Don Quixote in Stockholm. Stockholm was not where the tricky dancer was though. And everything stopped. I came back here to Berlin, my little family, and that was really great. It was blue skies for 2 whole months straight. It was unbelievable that spring. But after 2 or 3 months, started realizing I have to start finding some direction and moving forward, even though I don't have much to do. And almost all my contracts were canceled. Some of them would pay like 25% or 15%. Really tough financially for a year and a half there. But I started thinking about things. I had conducted a lot of Bernstein, a lot of Copland and Ives and some Gershwin and things like that. And I did this great ballet, John Neumeier's Bernstein dances. John had worked with Bernstein back in the day. And I had a lot of connections to Bernstein via Craig Urquhart, who was Bernstein's assistant. He lives here in Berlin. And I get asked every year now, because I'm an American in Europe, to conduct some American repertoire. Like every year, a ballet or an opera or some concerts, usually some concert. And I started thinking what to do with this and started working on some programs. And Stathis Karapanos, who I met via Christoph Eschenbach, a very fantastic Greek flutist, approached me and said, I actually was working in Helsinki and he called me. And during the pandemic, it was like the last opera house open. I was conducting a ballet there. And he called and said, Garrett, I want to record this piece, Lamentation for flute, but we're going to do a string orchestra. And we thought about you because you could probably find some really good string players in Berlin. I said, yeah, we could do that. And then actually Craig called me to say that this flutist wants to do it. And would you do it? Would you be interested? We just want to record this one piece. It's like 10 minutes long. Like, just want to record one piece. Yeah, we could do that. I said, just so we need a little money to hire the players. And Craig said, that's not going to be a problem. Okay. And so we got on the phone. He said, okay, we'll talk about it more in the next few days. And then 5 minutes later, Stathis called me, the Greek flutist, and said, I heard from Craig that you want to do this idea. You liked the idea to record this piece of his. I love the idea. We should do that. And I said, sure, yeah, we can do it. And he said, let's talk more tomorrow. Okay, so they were both thrilled about it, apparently. So Stathis and I started speaking the next few days. I was going to be in Helsinki for a few more weeks. And before everything got canceled there too. And he just basically started saying, hey, Garrett, we have some times saved already in this great recording studio and Teledeck studio here in Berlin. We already have some time saved there. Maybe we could use them. And also he said, a sponsor who is anonymous in Athens who would pay for us to record some things. We could put together a small orchestra, do some things. And so we decided just to start talking about it. And we were both excited about it. And I found this way to focus on American repertoire. And we put this whole CD together we started speaking about this in middle November of, I guess it was 20, like during the pandemic. Everybody in every city, Berlin, all the greatest musicians in Berlin that are usually on the road, traveling the world, we're all here. And everybody in the Berlin Philharmonic's here. Everybody was just stuck. And so we put together a plan. I put some money into it. he put some money into it. And then he said he had this anonymous donor. And he told me how much he could put into it, which is enough to really make a proper CD with really great players. Paid everybody cash. And we started, and I needed a name for the orchestra. And I didn't want it to be like Chamber Orchestra of American Music.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just tried to think of something different. And I didn't really get started in orchestra. Just for this CD, we'll call it the Berlin Academy for American Music. So it got a great start to this organization. And I didn't really plan to start an orchestra, like I say, but people started telling me in Berlin, hey, if you have a good group in Berlin, this can turn into something. There's several project-based orchestras. It's kind of like the Knights in New York, or Orpheus in New York. It's much older, but still same kind of idea. Project-based orchestra. And so we started this. And we're really focused on American music. And we basically, I would say, in our biggest concerts, we focus on two things, like the greatest classic names, like pieces by Bernstein, Gershwin, and Copland. Those are the three biggest. But then also equally, we focus on contemporary names. So it's Missy Mazzoli, Anthony Davis, or Billy Childs, or lots of different names like this. David T. Little is a composer I really like. And so there's lots of connections to New York, lots of connections to LA, and these bridges, these transatlantic bridges and connections. And so we do that. And we usually we don't really focus on European music, but we do regularly perform also a contemporary work by a European composer.
Wow.
So
that is so cool.
Yeah, thanks. And we haven't done any ballet yet, but maybe one day. What's also interesting about the orchestra is we're not all Germans and we're not all Americans for sure either. We're really completely international. In our orchestra, probably 30% are German. There's everything. There's probably 20% are American. There's usually a French person or two. There's somebody from the UK. There's somebody from Mexico. There's somebody from everywhere, like South America, from Spain. It's just totally like that. And what I love about that is we can bring a different kind of open-mindedness to playing these great scores of Bernstein or Gershwin or Missy Mazzoli. Yeah. There's a lot still left to develop. And of course, it's endless. There's endless possibilities out there. So we must uncover the next great ballets and the next great works of art, next great scores. We have to keep developing the next generations because there's much further to go. And audiences are interested in that too.
If you like this and you want more incredible dance content, join us on the Dance Lens free Substack for articles, videos, reviews, podcasts, and more. We also have monthly live deep dives for subscribers where you can hear directly from the artists and bring your questions about the art form and the work. Find the Substack in the link in the profile. Thanks for listening. I'm Cynthia Dragoni, The Dance Lens.